Well, hi and hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk More on Monday. I am so excited. We are jumping into issue 4 from April of 2022. I have Natalia here with me. We are going to be talking about Threads of Accountability, which was written by Sarah Moreland Byrne. And I'm super pumped. I feel like it's also such cool timing because we're coming out of New York Fashion Week 2024, and you had gone to New York Fashion Week previously. You are in the fashion business. You are a designer. I just saw one of your reels recently talking about why am I not wearing more things that I make myself. And I'm so excited to have you here today. So thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited. I can't believe it's been 2 years since we last did something together. That went by
So
so fast.
it really did. They say time flies when you're having fun, and I am a lover and hater of social media, but I am so thankful for the way that it connected us and we got to do this really cool project. We did the photo shoot in Thousand Words Gallery. We had Devin as our photographer, and we had just an awesome group on set for the whole thing. Do you mind giving us a quick run through of a little bit more about your brand, where you are now, and just all the fun things that you're up to?
Yeah. Okay. I started my brand in 2020. I had just graduated from FIT with a degree in fashion design in the middle of a pandemic. Not really ideal. But it did give me the jumping start to be able to start my brand. And so I did. And luckily it's gone well and I've been doing that ever since. It's still just me sewing everything, sewing all my products, doing all the things. But since then, I have now moved to LA from Indiana, so that is new. And yeah, it's been a very up and down journey, but we're still at it, still making clothes.
Mhm.
So
I love it. And I mean, girlfriend, name drop the brand, would you please?
oh yes, my brand is my name. It's Natalia Trevino Amaro, shortened to NTA. It's just easier. But yeah,
Ugh, I love it. I love the branding of it. It's so clean. It's high fashion and it's quality. And I love it every time I get to see it. So you are in LA now. That is obviously a huge, huge jump from Indianapolis. And you had gone to FIT and you'd been in New York. Can we talk a little bit about fashion in these different places, because East Coast to West Coast fashion, I think, is very different. And then getting started with a fashion brand in the Midwest, I feel like that is such a menaging of all these different places. What was it like starting a fashion brand in the Midwest and then going to New York Fashion Week and seeing that juxtaposition?
yeah, it was very interesting. Obviously, growing up in the Midwest, I was always kind of the outcast in fashion terms because I love dressing up and I was always just on something comparatively to everybody else. But yeah, I think going to New York and just seeing everybody kind of do that and not feeling out of place when I'm want to wear heels on a casual day or want to dress up, whatever,
Mhm.
is so just fun and such a great energy. Um, but I loved starting in the Midwest because I think it just kind of gave me a chance to shine a little bit because I was kind of the only one doing it there. Um,
Mhm.
and it gave me the time to kind of do it slower and not feel so much pressure from others doing the same thing around me or whatever. I feel like I would just had my own little kind of bubble and space to start and shine and do all the things and then kind of move on to the big city. Um, so I'm kind of really grateful I started in the Midwest. Obviously, it's very different. And I think my brand style when I was there was slightly different too. I think I'm really influenced by where I live and what's around me. So you can definitely tell different eras of my brand depending on where I was at in my life, which I think is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And now being on the West Coast is also very different from East Coast fashion. Obviously, the weather is just much warmer over here all the time. So it's I could do summer clothes all year long, basically, which is fun. I find that it's a lot more kind of relaxed here. I feel like New York is a lot more kind of high fashion, edgy. Here,
Mhm.
a little bit more leisure, kind of more chill. But I love combining kind of all three of those ranges into everything I do. I think, like I said, I'm really influenced by where I live and where I've lived and what I do. So I feel like all of those places kind of just intermingle into my brand a bit.
Yeah. That's incredible. I think it's so I mean, I went to school for marketing, but I was super interested in psychology, so I took a few psychology classes. I was convinced I was gonna like get a double major in that, but no. And to hear the way that our perception, and if there are psychology majors, do not quote me on this. But from what I remember, it's your perception is based on your experiences and your environment. It's like E plus E equals your P, whatever. And
Mhm.
I love the way that that translates into art. I mean, you can like look at Picasso or whoever you want to look at, and like look at the different periods of their life, or mistresses in his case, and see like what the art form looks like and how that was translated. So I love the way that you say that you have these different pieces of you from these different eras of your life, and you're wearing an Eras Tour shirt. Love it.
Um,
Represent, girl. No, I love it.
Big Swiftie.
And just the way that it like translates into how you create, because I feel like too, and I think that that kind of goes into business, like what will sell, and sometimes you have to look at like where you are in that way. What was it like going into this ethical, accountable, sustainable brand of yours in these different places? Has it been received similarly? Have you had to sell it in different ways depending on if you were in the Midwest or the East Coast or the West Coast?
Yeah, I would say the biggest difference is kind of just Midwest to like either coast. I feel like both coasts are a lot more receptive to like sustainability as a whole.
Mhm,
I feel like just much more into their culture. So it's not crazy of me to like be like, oh, I work in sustainable fashion. Like people understand that. But in the Midwest, it was not received as like easily. I think
mhm,
people were intrigued by it when I would talk about it, but they just like had no idea what I was talking about. If I said sustainable fashion, like what does that mean? Um,
mhm,
which is cool because it gives you like space to teach and like be able to like share that with people. But it was hard in terms of like I did a few pop-ups. Like I've done pop-ups in New York, LA, and Indiana. And my Indiana pop-ups were not good at all. Like it was just people be like questioning me the whole time, like, what is this? Why is it so expensive? Why does this matter? Like, which like again can be a good gateway for people to like start learning about it. So like, try to have like very chill conversations with them about it.
mhm,
But it's definitely such a different like way of like receiving it. Like in New York, I feel like people don't even question the fact that like something can be, more expensive just because it's handmade. They're just like, yeah, like of course that makes sense. And like they're not questioning it. Same with LA. So it is very different, very interesting, but obviously, like all three kind of give you room to grow differently and kind of share it with different people, which I think is important either way.
yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this a lot during the start of the social justice movement in 2020, but like having to always be the person who's teaching is exhausting. And obviously this is like very different, but to always be in a place where you're trying to make a change, make a difference, and make the world a better place, and then also always having to be the teacher when you are also already like, well, I've done my piece as well, so like you could participate now.
Mhm.
I feel like that'd be exhausting, and especially when you're at something like a pop-up where you already put in all of this energy and all of this work and all of this effort, and then to have people come question you. How do you, and I know I'm getting into, like, a little bit of the business side here, but how do you as an entrepreneur, how do you balance that when people are coming up to you and almost questioning your why for what you're doing? How do you balance that as you're like, trucking along doing your thing?
Yeah, it's an interesting balance because I think you really have to like know your audience and who you're talking to in that moment.
Mhm.
So with like certain people, I just like won't use the words sustainable or ethical, and I'll just be like, oh, like I handmade it, like
Mm,
that's it. That's all you get out of it, which is sustainable and ethical. But it's just like I'm not putting that word out because I think that word sometimes like pushes people away if they're not in that space. So
yeah.
sometimes it's just like kind of figuring out different wording. Because I think when I first started my brand, I used to like really push the fact that I was sustainable and ethical, and like I would use those words like no other,
Mhm.
which is good when it like brings in that audience of people that already are in that niche. But I think it like pushes a lot of people away that like don't understand it. So it's like
Mm,
you want to be preaching to like the choir or like to new like audiences, right? So like I'm trying to step away and like kind of bring like not normal people, other people that aren't in the space like into it.
Yeah.
So it's really just like about language and like trying to match kind of their vibe and like find something that they could relate on. I think for me it's like, okay, well, do you want people to be paid fairly? Like this is this expensive because I made it and I'm paying myself fairly comparatively
Mhm.
to like if you go shop at Forever 21, like yeah, you
Yeah.
can make a $5 shirt, but like have you ever thought about the people that are making it and how much they're making off of it? Like a
Mhm.
lot of people do actually end up caring about those things because I feel like it's you should care about humans
Yeah.
treated like kind. But sometimes just kind of like trickling that into their brains, like in like a questioning them, so then they start like kind of thinking about it. Yeah, I've had a lot of really interesting conversations with people surrounding the topic. Um, but I think it really is just kind of like figuring out what their vibe is and kind of trying to match that and finding common ground. I think that's always the main thing.
I think it's always so impressive, and I think key in conversations to expand or grow together to meet people where they are.
Mhm.
And that's amazing that you are working to meet people where they are in a way that is also challenging them to think outside of their norm, because that's not easy, especially when you are a business and you are working to make your living and also pursuing something that is so passionate and a dream of yours in that way.
Mhm.
Thank you for your patience with the masses. And I am so happy that from what I've seen, fashion is moving towards that as a whole. So hopefully you will be able to do more of the general selling and less of the educating along the way.
Hopefully, yes.
How have you seen fashion change? Kind of like following that train of thought. How have you seen fashion change since getting started to now? I know you said the coast have always like it's been maybe top of mind for them a little bit more than it has in the in between states, but in your experience, especially because I'm sure I know you travel, going to these different places regularly, how have you seen that change maybe in language, in conversation, or in buying habits?
Yeah, I think it's much more widely accepted to like be in the sustainable fashion sphere. I think like thrifting has become a lot more normalized, at least with the younger generations. So that's kind of like a huge one because I think even like in the Midwest growing up, I feel like thrifting wasn't particularly cool, or at least where I grew up, I feel like it wasn't seen as like a cool thing to do.
Mm,
Now I see people like that are, you know, a little bit younger than me, like go thrifting and like it's normal. I'm like, good, like I'm glad, like that's great. So things like that I feel like have been a lot more normalized, which is cool. I think there's still a long way to go because with fashion, I find it just kind of ironic that we are kind of moving towards sustainability a lot. Like there's a lot of sustainable brands coming out, a lot of sustainability initiatives and like legislation coming out. But at the same time, we have like the biggest fast fashion giants that we've ever had in our entire like existence coming at
mm,
the same time, which is like just like really ironic. I don't know how those two are like coexisting because like we are moving more sustainable, but also it's like the fast fashion industry is like growing more than ever. Not sure how that works, but hopefully like we can take them over. But it is
yeah.
very interesting. I think it's very 50-50 on like if like people still kind of going towards the fast fashion route versus the sustainability route, but it is being more talked about, which is good. But I have also seen a lot of like sustainable brands like shut down in the last few years. Like I
Mm,
think 2021 was really peak for a lot of them because a lot of people were just caring more during that time and like more online and maybe more like educated on the subject. And I feel like
mhm,
as we transitioned out of like the pandemic, a lot of people have stopped caring as much or like I don't know, I guess like people are going out more, they want more outfits and like social media is more heightened, whatever. And I feel like I've seen a lot of like brands that I started following at the time like have to shut down, which is kind of sad.
yes.
Uh, so it's like an interesting like yeah, I do see the industry kind of moving a lot and it being more normalized, but at the same time like it's still a very hard industry to make it in, and I see like so many people have to like leave it because it's just not making enough. So it's a weird like phase to be in. Like I see it kind of like yeah, it's moving, but also it's like kind of not at the same time, you know.
Yeah, it's I also think it's hard, and we'll have to dial in like an econ expert for this, but as people care more and they want quality things. Quality things cost more, and we care about that because people should be paid what they deserve to be paid. And those materials also often cost more because then it's higher quality. Inflation,
Mhm.
pay not keeping up with inflation, all of the things, because I think that that's the most frustrating bit
Mhm.
is so many people caring, wanting to support, wanting to help move this needle, but then also reality of your means and your
Right.
accessible like income. And I like in my mind I see like that's why fast fashion has been able to thrive because they're like in that range that people can afford,
Mhm.
but then when it rips, tears, whatever, they have to replace it. So then it creates like this cycle of things. And granted, I mean, I'm in like this financial girl era where I'm listening to Your Rich BFF and all the things like that. But hearing how it's like, well, if you want quality things, you want to buy them, and maybe you have that money over X amount of time, but you don't have all of that lump sum when you need it to make
Yeah.
that purchase, which is very interesting to me. How do you see, because I mean, we're talking about effort, we're talking about brands putting in effort, and I think some brands, from what I've seen, started off very superficial because they wanted to jump on the train, but then people were asking, well, actually, like, how are your initiatives really making an impact? Are you following up? Are you doing the things? And so I've loved to see, again, these threads of accountability with brands from consumers asking these harder questions and wanting to see proof, essentially. Do you feel like consumers, even while not able to always spend, can continue to inspire brands to meet the expectation of being sustainable and ethical?
I think they definitely can. I think with social media, like people can really just go at it on like brands Instagrams, which I love when people do. Like anytime there's some sort of like controversial like moment. Like I think of I'm trying to think of like specific, but I can't remember what brand it was. It may have been like Pretty Little Thing or one of those, like during like Women's History Month or whatever, or International Women's Day or something like that. They post like, you know, a t-shirt that's like something about like, yeah, female empowerment, whatever. And then all the comments were like, yeah, but do you pay your like female garment workers enough? And then they like disabled their comments because so many people were commenting it. So it's like you can actually reach brands if you consistently do that. And I've seen that work with like people asking for like inclusivity with like sizing. It's a lot
Mhm,
of people being like, hey, I would love to shop your brand, but you don't have my size. And if enough people comment that, the brand will be like, okay, there's demand. Like maybe let's try it out. And we've seen that happen with a lot of brands that have extended their size ranges since. So I think it's definitely possible without necessarily spending money to kind of like push a brand to do better, which I think is really cool. It's kind of like the same, kind of like power as like voting in a sense.
mhm,
Kind of like you can pressure and like
right,
vote with your wallet and like kind of with
mhm,
your comment and reviews and kind of expanding on that.
mhm.
Uh, so I think that definitely people can really push brands if they want to.
Yeah, I think voting with your wallet whenever you can is always great because it shows like what you're prioritizing as a consumer, which can be very indicative of what brands do next. I mean, brands and businesses, as you know, need to make money. So, what are people paying attention to? Where are they putting their money? I mean, I've even seen brands just slow down their production, which I think is great. And I know like pre ordering is something that I feel like, especially as a business owner, when I first started our business, I was so nervous to do hard copies because I was very concerned about mass producing. And we still only do a 100 print run because I don't want to do that. But before we even did it, I remember I did pre orders because everyone was asking for a copy of the magazine, but I was very hesitant because if there wasn't going to be real follow through or real demand after the fact, I did not want to go through the mental, physical labor to then potentially just have a bunch of material wasted in that way. And so I've seen a lot more brands step into that mindset of making pre-orders so then they know how much to produce. I think Reverly, it's a bridesmaid wedding attire company. I think they do a really great job of that and everything is so high quality. And I also think it will inspire more conscious spending as a whole, which I don't know what business really wants to hear people watching their dollars more, but I think that that would be great too because you're not then getting this instant gratification, especially when you're a young professional or in college and you want to buy from Shein or whatever it is, you get that instant gratification and then you just kind of start getting into that cycle. I know when I first graduated college and I got my first big girl job and that first paycheck came in, I knew I couldn't buy like the top brand, but I was able to buy a lot of all these other things. And then it started this cycle that I like caught up or like realized more after that those first 2 years. And so I feel like if brands can pour into the consumers by giving them what they want, they can also then pour into them in other ways, which I think would be a beautiful relationship that they can coexist together in that way.
Right. No, exactly.
Not to go on that tangent. I don't know where that got inspired from, but obviously talking to you, my brain is going a million different ways now. What what do you see happening with your brand? So you are in LA now, which I just found out on this call, which is amazing and congratulations. I think that's such a big step. What do you think what are you envisioning?
That is a great question, and I ask myself that every day.
And that's
I
okay. It can change.
It changes all the time, and I think there was a period of time when I first started that, like, I was like, "Oh, I wanna, like, have my own little manufacturing moment, whatever, because 'cause I'm still making everything myself," and it does get exhausting,
Mhm.
but, like, at the same time, I like that's the part of it that I love, like, I love sewing, and I love, like, actually being the one that, like, creates something and then seeing somebody else wear it, like, is such a gratifying feeling that I don't think I would feel the same if somebody else was just making it and I just, like, slap my name on it and, like, send it out.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to figure out what the balance is between like scaling, but also still having my hands in it. Because I
Yeah.
think also a lot of what people love about my brand is the fact that I make it and that like I share my process and like you can see me making pieces. Like I
Mhm.
just can't imagine what my content would be if I'm not the one sewing it. I'm like that's what people love. It's like they love to see me sewing and like I love sewing.
Mhm.
So trying to figure out what the fine line of like scaling is at that point, because obviously like it's not very sustainable lifestyle wise to be sewing forever and like sewing everything myself forever, but
Mhm.
um trying to find a balance between kind of just like a slow scaling, still keeping it small and sustainable, but obviously like allowing myself like to be able to live a little bit more freely and like financially freely and whatnot. So
Mhm.
trying to figure out what that balance would be. Not quite sure yet, but you know, we've got time. It's fine. We're making it through so far. So
Mhm. No, that's amazing. I love that. Do you see yourself I mean, I always ask this question with other entrepreneurs. What is your mindset on collaboration in the sustainable fashion, ethical business space? Are you opening doors to partnership with others who are kind of in a similar range as you? Because I mean, I also believe in the stronger together mindset. But what does that look like in LA? Because we were in Indiana last time we spoke.
yeah, I love collaborating with people out here. I've done a few like fashion shows and pop-ups with like other also like sustainable like handmade designers.
Mhm.
And I really do find that there's like so much power in numbers. Like I think a lot of people question it because they're like, "Oh, aren't they like your competitors?" I'm like, "No." I think with fashion it's like we're all such different styles and aesthetics. Like nobody's going to be my exact aesthetic even
Right.
if we're like similar, like nobody's exactly me in the same way that nobody's like exactly like my friends or anything. So I love collaborating with other like sustainable designers. I've done like an upcycling workshop with a couple of my friends and like things like that I think are a really cool way to kind of like bring people into and just like kind of foster community around that. I find that LA is very receptive to like a sustainable community, which
Mhm.
is really cool. Like I have a really great group of friends out here that like really care about sustainable fashion and like we've put on quite a few little events and gatherings and things and people are always really receptive to it, which is cool. So yeah, I'm like all for collaboration. I'm always down to collaborate with people. I think that's such a great way to like get exposure for yourself and for the others. Like I'll collaborate with photographers or like other artists or models, whoever. Always down. Always down.
That's amazing. I love to hear there's enough room in the garden for everyone to bloom, and when you have more than one flower, it's a garden, and I love it. So beautiful. What before we close out, what advice would you share with people who are conscious of where their money goes, but maybe don't have the financial means to always buy consciously made materials and clothing? every time.
Yeah, I think it's really just a mindset shift. I think we always talk about like how to buy more responsibly, but we don't talk about like the fact that maybe we don't even need to be buying. Like
Mm,
maybe you have what you need. And I think that's been really helpful whenever I'm like, oh, I really need this new boots or something. I'm like, okay, do I really need new boots or do I just like really want new ones? Would I use them a lot? Yes. Like, would they be a staple in my closet? Will they get their wear? Like, yeah. But like, do I absolutely need them right now? No. Like, let me just wait till I find them like secondhand for like cheap or something.
mhm.
So I think just having the mindset shift of like, do I really need it? Or like, is it really like something necessary in my life? And sometimes it is.
Right.
Like, I don't know, if you like have like running shoes and you're like very active and your running shoes are like really wearing out, like, yeah, you're gonna need new running shoes, like for the sake of your feet and like, your physical ability. But like, I think just really having the mindset of, do I really need it? Can I find it secondhand first? Like, I don't know if you need like a specific like tool for something that you're fixing in your house. Like, can I borrow it from a friend? Like,
Mhm.
just trying to find ways around it that aren't just like, I need to buy it, has been really helpful, but also just like giving yourself grace. Like, if you really can't find something sustainably, it's really not your fault as much as it is like the fact that it's just not accessible in the world.
Yeah.
And you can't really put yourself down for that. Like, I definitely like still shop on Amazon whenever I like need things like quickly or like need like random household things that I just don't know where else to buy. Like, yeah, I'll buy it on there. Do I love buying things on there? No, but it's just like sometimes that's the most accessible option, and like you really
Right.
can't be mad at yourself for that. Like that's just the world we live in. So just
Mm,
give yourself grace.
mm. Love that. Give yourself grace in all the things.
Yeah.
So from here, other than for new listeners, for fans who have been following you maybe on one channel or another, how can the people keep up with you?
Yeah, you can find me pretty much anywhere at Natalia Trevino Amaro. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all the things. And my website is nataliatrevinoamaro.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. And if you haven't yet, head over to our Patreon where you can dig deeper with us as we jump into our next topic. Thanks for listening.